up a whatever you like in there as well, just to share a bit of feedback, maybe a bit of support, maybe a prayer request if you wish to. The telephone number to give a call, Mary's on the line downstairs, 014 123 456. Annoy the hain cahar hain do trí cahar cuig sé cur dlech oring on telephone on shot radio Maria. We would like to hear from you indeed. Plus 353, of course, in front of that if you're in the north or outside of Ireland. 1 is the Dublin code, 4 123 456. Text and WhatsApp us on 089 467 2000. 089 467 2000. JJ Rang said there's a problem with Sairview this morning that hasn't been working. Now, I didn't follow through on that. I only just noticed that, so thanks for letting us know, JJ. If you have problems with reception in that regard, please let us know. The first thing we usually try and do here is switch on the telly in the studio to see is Sairview working. I might just do that at the break. Sometimes it's a local issue, sometimes it's a national issue, sometimes it's here in our server room that the problem lies. There were some issues at the weekend as well. I meant to ask Aidan about it last weekend and never did, forgot. So I hope that's not an ongoing problem. Do let us know, because we do love to hear from you if that is the case, so that we can resolve it quickly and get on to our technical people. Don't be shy about texting us or phoning us up to let us know. Liam was in touch, and he was listening to the repeat of last evening's, the repeat of yesterday's Chatechesis last evening. And he said near the end of the show mentioned damage to the environment and a statement that was being made about beginning to turn things around, and wondering who that was by. I'll share the rest of that with you. Archbishop Dermot Farrell published a pastoral letter, the Archbishop here in Dublin, in relation to the year that has begun, a year of care for creation and mindful of the blessing of the gift of creation around us. So very important that we just keep that before us and remind ourselves of our duty as custodians of the created world around us, and mindful of how we use the things of this world. An interesting one to keep in mind, it's just throw it out there as a suggestion, is how we use electricity. So if you find yourself going around the house and turning off lights, and I find myself doing that all the while, in terms of saving money, I'm very mindful here in Radio Maria how every penny that's spent comes from our dear listeners or friends, from you as our supporters. So lights are being switched off, and energy, mindful of conserving energy at all costs. Even simple things like not overfilling a kettle. If you came across that idea, I'm sure it's been advertised or mooted before. The amount of power it takes to actually boil a kettle of water. And you know how you could test that out in terms of the wattage that is consumed, is if you were to get on an exercise bike that was wired up to the kettle, that was generating power with a dynamo or something. How long would you be cycling on the bike to boil a kettle of water? And that the more water you put in, the longer you'll be on top of that exercise bike to get the energy flowing to boil the water. And it would be just an interesting little test to see, well, how long would it take, depending on the power output, of course, of the dynamo. But it would be a pretty tiring exercise. And so it would remind us to, if it's not necessary, to put only what's the minimum amount, say, into a kettle for boiling water. And you see, if that takes place in every home across Ireland, for example, I don't know how many homes, 4 million homes or something, that's an enormous amount of energy saved and conserved. Excuse me. And of course all those other questions in relation to saving energy in the home, insulation and ventilation where necessary too. All of these things, how much we reuse and how much we recycle, how much we waste. There's a lot of areas there to be touched in on. And it really starts with the individual. Am I mindful indeed of the good things that I enjoy materially, and seeking to make good use of them. And again, to recycle, we have a small little thing that I certainly do in my own office. I think Aidan is good at it too, probably the other offices around the building. But any piece of paper that we use by way, we have to print off our schedules and things during the day. If the back of it is blank, well, I always keep it just to use the blank And in fact, I know Aisling in her work, when the letters come in, each letter in the morning, we have a little. It used to be, I remember, an office used to work, and there was like a stamp that you put on the letter of the date when it was received, and then who would action the letter. This was always in the building sites, the various initials of people in the building who it was sent to. So the original would be kept in the sort of original incoming file, and a copy then would be sent out to those who had an awful lot of photocopying going on of letter. I remember, oh gosh, standing in front of a photocopier as a memory that's come back to me, copying letters and distributing them around the building. But it had to be done. You need the master copy, obviously, but then if one has to go to the planning department, one to the buyer, the suppliers, the QSs, that was my role. We'd certainly be party to most things. And there'd be just wads of correspondence to have to leaf through, I remember, every day, and have to draw from it then what pertained exactly to the running of the thing. At any rate, that long scale there, a letter would have to be action. So we have a little system here where we have a little piece of paper. It's about that size, let's say, and on it we list the various elements of who sent the letter, the date it was received. Is it a new listener, for instance, who's in touch with us? If so, we send out a full breadth of literature in reply, and add their name into our little database as well. GDPR, of course, all these things. There's a GDPR section on there. If it's a donation or an offering, what form is it in? Check or post order or so on. Fill that in. Is there a mass intention requested? So there's quite a long list down the sheet. Mass intention, a prayer request would go into our WhatsApp prayer group that would be broadcast on air. Is there a bit of feedback? We have a little feedback WhatsApp group. It goes into that. And then on the end, is there when this letter was responded to, and so by the end of the thing, there'll be several initials on each letter as to who had read it and who had actioned it. So the point I'm ultimately getting to, that little piece of paper that we use was printed on the other side, and we in other words, it's reused paper is what we use, and we have quite a lot of those going around the building. So it's just a very small little thing of reusing rather than binning into landfill or whatever. Certainly into recycling too. So we keep a very careful record like that, just to illustrate that point for you as well, of all the correspondence we receive in detail. We file it all. Aisling has got a lovely system going now. We file it all in date order, and we can find your piece of correspondence very easily. And it's great cross-referencing in the system there as well. And then we use that, of course, to reply and to add to the feedback that comes in, and it's just very encouraging. So it's very, very organised, and again, with a view to accountability and transparency, all these things so important. At any rate, in the meantime, what we're seeking to do then with that little saving exercise is to save a little bit of paper and to grow in efficiency, and again save on costs, and thereby best use the donations that come to us. All very simple and small, but at the same time significant. So when it comes to caring for the environment, the little things often is where we can start. It's all about being conscious, maybe in the first instance, and just being aware of what we use and we consume. And in the light of our faith, and this is where I would add another very important dimension to this very important conversation, is that our faith tells us, and our faith animates us to see all things as coming as blessings from God, and to make very good use of these things that we enjoy in the light of God's goodness to us. And if, again, where our prayer stems or motivated from a point of view of thanksgiving for what we have received, then we can just be extra mindful of seeking not to waste or not to damage or not to abuse these very positive gifts that we enjoy. So have a look around in your own mind's eye, your own home or your own office. Look to the ways that some small changes might be made. It's lovely in schools. They have a green flag system, and maybe some of you are familiar with that. And they teach and train the students, young boys and girls, to recycle and to compost. remember one school I was in, the boys and girls, after the small break in the morning, to be around this time, about 11:15. The break usually sort of 11 to 10 past or 11 to quarter past. Excuse me. And two of the older pupils in the primary school would be delegated with a bucket, and they would go around. I suppose there were little bins in each of the classrooms for orange peels and banana peels and, I don't know, crusts or whatever the children would not consume that was biodegradable in their little small lunches. And they would be delegated around all the classrooms. They'd pick up the compostable material and take it off to the far end of the schoolyard, and there was a compost bin there. The one thing they had to be careful, I remember this time of year, was the wasps. The wasps would certainly be buzzing around, so they'd be extra cautious this time of year. But an excellent idea, and really a wonderful way of teaching young boys and girls to be mindful of their environment, school environment, and encouraging them then to tick that little box on the list of things in the school that would allow them to avail of this green flag. So if you're ever visiting or passing a primary school, you see a green flag flying outside, it means they've reached a certain standard in relation to reusing and recycling and just mindful of the environment. I think there's a series of green flags that schools can be awarded for their use, again, of I don't know, light-saving bulbs or something. What other 101 ways are there of just being very economic? It's very interesting, isn't it? Because I know my own parents, they would have grown up during the war years, and as a result, growing up at home, we grew up with their mentality of, no waste, save everything, put that to one side, we'll find another use for that. Because during the war, of course, things were desperately short. And what else could they do? Reusing tea bags how many times over, if there were tea bags, but back then. But these kind of things, black bread, and I hear stories from my parents' generation, and maybe indeed you're familiar with them. But the deprivation that was there and the need that was there, and clothes and all these things, making your own clothing, knitting jumpers and all these things, certainly planting fruit and veg. And they tell me that's one of the reasons why there are some handy-sized plots of land out the back gardens of older houses. Newer houses don't have such big acreage. It's not acres really, but they don't have substantial gardens to them, modest-sized ones. But the theory, I'm told, was that with a sufficiently sized garden, that you could grow enough of your own veg and fruit to supply for your own family's needs, at least up to a point. So interesting to know, to realise and recognise that some of those gardens in older houses were intended with that purpose in mind, because of the want or the need or the material well-being wasn't there. But now, of course, things have changed so much, and that we are so materially well off, certainly here in Ireland. We are certainly one of the wealthiest nations, I would say, per capita in the world. But it has meant that we have perhaps grown lazy, we've grown ungrateful, maybe, for the things we have. Or maybe that's not the best word, but unappreciative, that we take for granted too much, and again are not mindful of the importance of the material things around us, and the sheer work and effort and graft that goes into producing the material things that we consume. And again, we're victim too, I would say, to an extent, of a kind of culture that has a sort of built-in obsolescence to it. Got a message the other day. My smartphone there is only about 2 years old. Just upgraded my phone a couple of years ago, and the contract on it, or whatever I'm paying for it, I have no idea. But it's due to be fulfilled shortly, that I'll have paid for the phone over a period of months or whatever. So a text came in saying, "Oh, well, now you're eligible for an upgrade." And I'm like, hang on a second. I'm just getting this thing paid off, or now you're going to give me another one. That we've sort of built in obsolescence to things. we're not as inclined to reuse or that's why it's great you see some of these videos online of people renovating old things and bringing them back into use again. What was ever wrong with fixing things? Do we just throw things out now? We don't fix them anymore? That's frustrating. Well, I certainly grew up in a house where things were fixed and they were kept, and we've got any amount of nuts and bolts and screws and things for fixing things at home, and that's what's brought up to it, really. So is this part of that story? I would say perhaps it is, that we've failed to appreciate the good things we enjoy as much. So now I'll continue with Archbishop Farrell's message there for another little bit, if I may, his own pastoral letter on the question of the climate. He says, over the last 18 months, the pandemic has brought home to us the fragility of our lives and how fleeting are many of the networks on which we've come to depend. And that continues, I suppose, really. Our planet and its social organisation are as fragile as they are complex. And again, it's interesting, isn't it, how a pandemic, how a crisis changes perspective, can quickly change, like the war, for instance, Second World War. Our planet and its, what we need to realise is that over the coming decades, the issues currently arising from climate change will impact far more on us than those from the pandemic. Indeed, the havoc of the pandemic will pale when compared to that of climate change. And we're seeing the effects of that, or certainly we're seeing, again, there are those who don't quite buy into some of this. We should certainly verify all of these happenings around the world, but we certainly are seeing a lot of flooding going on, bushfires and these things going on as well, which should give rise for at least our attention that this seems to be, at a different level than we're used to. Part of it too, I suppose, is the level of communication has improved so much as well. We can hear very easily about bushfires in Australia or California, or floods in Europe very quickly through social media. This pastoral letter, the Archbishop says, which I've titled The Cry of the Earths, The Cry of the Poor, approaches the climate catastrophe from the perspective of faith. That is not to say it excludes the insights and contribution of the natural sciences. On the contrary, healthy faith takes on board what God says through creation. Excuse me. And that's exactly the fact that we go through the visible to the invisible. The things of are unseen are made known to us through what is seen. Sorry, no, the frog is back. Faith and science are not opponents in a truly Christian view. Faith and reason, fides et ratio, go hand in hand. The two is the wings of a bird, that they both, support one another. Faith leads to understanding in the end. So when we have God's view of the world, that changes our perspective, our understanding most certainly. So this is the heart of our faith, that God reveals himself through the world, and scientists have issued a code red, not just for the environment, but for humanity itself. And we speak of that here in Radio Maria, the culture of death. It's heartbreaking when you see the disregard for human life, and it echoes the disregard for the environment. It's as if we're pressing the self-destruct button and don't want to stop pressing it. Let us not fool ourselves, Archbishop Farrell says. There can be no enduring response to the cry of the earth without responding to the need for justice and dignity. And that's good, like both go together. It's the human person is at the heart of the visible world of creation, to the glory of God always. So if we lose sight of one, we certainly lose sight of the other. This pastoral letter is an extended engagement with the vast and complex reality of climate. A long document, it seeks to dialogue with the varied views and voices, both religious and cultural, which seek to cast light on the crisis. All too often, religion appears that it is no more than an intellectual failure of nerve. It's an interesting description. However, true religion is not a flight from the world. Faith that is alive provides a framework for people to make decisions and to take action. What are we to do? Faith demands some response and some action. I just have in front of me here the Ducat. I don't know if you ever saw that before. It's the catechism, another version of the catechism. It says, what are we to do? The Ducat. I might take a little question or two from that a little bit later. So, if not for your own sake, then surely for the sake of your children and the world's children, consider dedicating some time to the issues raised in the pages of this letter. One possible next step for communities and parishes might be to consider signing the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition. Endorsed by the Holy See, this petition, aimed at the UN Climate Conference, advocates for an agreement that limits warming to 1.5 degrees while protecting and supporting those most affected by the climate crisis. That's interesting statement there. That seems almost out of our past. How do you limit warming to 1.5 degrees? You have to break that down and get to the nitty-gritty of what specific. It's like some of the suggestions I've made. Actions can help to contribute towards that. It's not like we can just turn the thermostat down, that's what I'm thinking. The cry of the earth and the cry of the poor go hand in hand. For the Holy See, the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition is a key advocacy action for this year's season of creation. Communities, people in parishes and dioceses, as well as religious congregations, are encouraged to sign the petition. I must find out a bit more about that now myself. www.healthyplanetandpeople, all one word, .org. So we'll certainly wade our way through this pastoral letter and share more of it with you as well as we go along. So another step might be to engage with the Laudato Si Prize. Sounds a bit like the green flag idea for schools. An initiative of the Archdiocese of Dublin to incentivise imaginative and bold responses in the face of the climate challenge and the vision for which is laid out in the pastoral. That'll be an interesting one too, a Laudato Si Prize. It is important to be clear there is a cost in addressing the climate situation, as well as a financial cost. We will have to embrace lifestyle change. Again, that idea of simply not overfilling the kettle. Start somewhere. Start somewhere. Recycling and reusing. Pick the areas. It requires many perspective shifts, political, social, economic, and ecclesial. So the Church is embracing this wholeheartedly. The challenge is to discover how we can live more sustainably. Again, the idea of the backyard, should I plant a bit of veg out there? A few fruit bushes and gooseberries I remember we had years ago, to add somehow to the sustainability of creation, and it brings its own rewards, I think, in its own way. If you listen to Margaret Griffin and her Sow and Grow show on a Tuesday, indeed she's full of lovely ideas in that regard as well. So, in other words, how we can live more sustainably and more responsibly, and as a result, more humanly in our common home. Christ came not only to call us to a new way of living, but he came to empower us to live in that new way. Christ has not left us. Our Lord has not abandoned us, for, in the words of Pope Francis, Christ has united himself definitively to our earth, and his love constantly impels us to find new ways forward. May Christ's faith and courage give us hope and strength to embrace what we now have to do in the face of what has become humanity's defining challenge. Indeed, it has become a defining moment for us. A response is certainly necessary, and many indeed are responding as they know how. So each one of us again can play our part in faith too. Good, let me pause for a little piece of music. Do please get in touch, 089 467 2000. This conversation, of course, will continue onwards and forwards, and we'll see what we have to learn and what we might suggest, or some thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your suggestions as well. There might be small little things that you are doing which are proving effective in their own way. And let's see if we can make some little difference ourselves as well. So now Tara's looking after the mixing desk for me. Dan Forrest, a really cool choral composer. Nice little bit of alliteration there. We'll have a listen to Be Thou My Vision. So again, 089 467 2000 to text and WhatsApp. Give Mary a call on the phone here, 014 123 456. Drop an email, info@radiomaria.ie. Put a comment, a like, a follow, subscribe, share, all these things on our social media as well. Please do. And by all means, write to us at St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymount Road, Dublin 22. It's now time for our cool choral composer.
Father, are you able to check the Serview connection?
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thou my wisdom and thou my true word, I ever with thee and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and I thy trust, riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance now and always. Thou and thee first in my heart, thy King of heaven, my treasure thou art. High King of heaven, my victory won, may I reach heaven's joys of bright sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever before, still be my
30 seconds, Father.
Now, Be Thou My Vision, beautiful. That is certainly a cool composer. It's beautifully done and beautifully sung, a choral rendition of Be Thou My Vision. So welcome back to Radio Maria Ireland. Thanks for your messages. Do please keep them coming in to us, and indeed I can share the sentiment that you're sharing with us. Eamon O'Brien is the name, I think, there, sent in a little leaflet. I think I don't have time to go through it all or read through it all, just caught little bits of it there. But interesting in the topic and the conversation that we're going to probably have a share of anyway going forward. The idea of, going back in history, the Native American Indians, how close to nature they were. Interesting that the French, when they came to Canada, the Hurons, and who were the Iroquois, they referred to them as sauvages, savages, in the very primitive way they used to live, and the cruelty indeed of the Indians towards the various tribes and one another. So original sin was alive and well in their community as much as in ours, but they had a great closeness to the land, albeit in a kind of not obviously in a Christian sense, but very interesting. And just the little bit of writing I'm just reading here, a Red Indian writing or Native American Indian writing. I am a savage, but I don't understand when I see the rotting corpses of the buffaloes on the prairie left by the white man who shot them from a passing train. When we killed the buffalo in order to survive, the white man has turned it into a kind of a sport. Interesting. I'll get to read through a little bit more of that there. There's some good in that we can learn from. One little line in there as well, that the ground we walk on, we're standing on the ashes of our forefathers. It's a nice, interesting thought too. Sobering idea as well. But certainly I can relate to Peter, and it could be easy to get frustrated with the topic. I accept that too, Peter. All the talk, he says, is suffocating me when we're told not to burn coal or turf or logs. Don't use your fires when, we see all kinds of stuff going up into the atmosphere otherwise, with military activity, for instance. So I hear what you're saying, Peter, and I can sigh along with you as well. We see the injustices in the world. But we have to begin somewhere. We have to begin somewhere. Mightn't be able to do anything about the great military forces that seem to be. There's a lot of very interesting questions that I'd love to get some just clarification on. This question of electric cars, I find a fascinating thing, for instance. But I'm told, and I've read somewhere, that, there's zero carbon emissions from an electric car, but the amount of carbon that goes into actually making the car and the battery far outweighs the emissions from a petrol or diesel car. So it just sounds like the efficiency of these and the expense of them outweighs their. Now you have to go somewhere with them and maybe get to the point where these things will begin to tip the balance. But apparently, that's and the other interesting thing about the wind turbines as well, as I understand, they are terribly inefficient at capturing wind energy, because there's times when the wind doesn't blow. And indeed, there's certain environmental issues to be considered. And somebody did a thesis recently on showing that they don't pay for themselves because it's so expensive. I don't know. So all these these are fabulous questions to really explore. And how is it we haven't yet somehow harnessed wave energy? There's a huge amount of kinetic energy to be tapped into, potential energy to be tapped into there. But if it gets the conversation started, Peter, if it kind of drives us on, even if we are kind of suffocated by the whole thing, or if it seems to be ideologically driven in some way, let's ask, very intelligent questions. Let's search and go deep. But, and here's what I would insist upon, I hope we will certainly do here for you and with you on Radio Maria, is to bring the light of faith to bear upon it. And that's why I like Archbishop Dermot there has coupled the two ideas together. And that's what Pope Francis is doing as well, that it's the poor, the cry of the earth, but the cry of the poor. Let me see how he phrased it here. Oh no, I've lost it again. But the idea that the poverty of the earth, if you like, or the planet, let's say, the cry of the earth, the cry of the poor. There is a terrible injustice going on here. And if we can just keep that association and that link very much foremost in our minds and hearts, that there are many in our planet who are without. And part of the reason, a strong element of the reason, is this idea of selfishness and greed that's exploiting the earth and exploiting the poor. So this is really a social justice question as much as it is a faith question too. So let's work on it together. Don't let it frustrate you too much, Peter. I can relate and I can understand how it can be just a little bit. But let's try and bring a different perspective to it if we can here on Radio Maria, and see that what we're doing is a part of our growth in holiness, in faith and in love for God and His creation, and in love for others. So let's see it in a very different light if we can, and not get sucked into some of the controversies or the heat, if you like, that's generated about these things. And see that we again play our part. That lovely expression I mentioned before, Cardinal Lorenzi, at the World Meeting of Families. Where was it? It was in Germany, I think, Cologne. We were years ago, 2005 or something. But I remember he just said a lovely simple expression to the young people. He said, look, in Africa and Nigeria, we have an expression: if everyone swept outside their own front door, we'd have a lovely clean neighbourhood, a clean community, a clean world. So it's that simple. We sweep outside our own front doors. We beautify again our own little bit of the environment, and if everyone can do that, the blessings that brings to everyone is just so simple idea, very simple. So Tom says, thanks, very interesting, an illuminating talk. So thank you for that, Tom. I appreciate certainly the conversation, and do again participate in it. Help me along a little bit, prompt me. He said there was an old saying that willful waste makes woeful want. Love that. Thanks, Tom. Willful waste makes woeful want. So, again, just be attuned a little more to what might be being wasted, Certainly the use of heating oil or electricity, energy of any kind, to be, water as well. We're so blessed with clean running water, and have hot, clean water in our homes. What a luxury, really, what a luxury. So whatever way we can mind plastics, again, we can go on and on and on. But don't think of it just in terms of those material things. Think beyond to our neighbour. Think beyond to the gifts that come from God. Think of the poor. Think of the poor. So thanks, Christine. Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, Mary. Just shouting out there on Facebook. Thanks for your little comments there. Nice to hear from you. Very, very grateful to you. So nice to get all those little reactions. Help me along in that, and we'll dip in and do a bit of research. We'll study a bit more the Pastoral Letter from Archbishop Dermot Farrell there, and we'll just keep the conversation flowing. And again, don't allow me to overburden things or this with you either. It's just that it's begun yesterday, and we'll start off well, and we'll keep the conversation flowing. And see what it is then that we are called, as the Catechism says, to do. What am I to do? And the Ducat is full of very articulate expression of the Church's social teaching, which, is what this is all about. So it's one thing to be a Catholic, to profess faith, to pray, to celebrate the sacraments, to believe in the doctrine of the Church. But now, and always, we need to ask ourselves, what are we to do? How are we to take part in the Church's social mission? How are we to hold fast to that central idea of the dignity of the human person? What is God's plan for us then in all of this? And where does God direct us or want us to be directed? How are we to care for the common good? Personhood, these great expressions that have come through in the decades there. Solidarity, Pope St. John Paul brought that one out. Subsidiarity, and the principles of the social teaching of the Church. And then I'm just reading the chapter headings here. The foundation of society is the family. Very important. And then human work, occupation and vocation. These are great topics. Economic life, welfare and justice for all. One world, the international community. Again, how do we give expression to that in the life of faith? And I might dip in, maybe I'll just mark it for the next day. There's a short number of paragraphs in relation to the environment and creation. But it's all in the context of love in action, living in freedom from violence. They're great chapter headings in the Do Cat. So let me dip into a little bit of this for you, if I may, and we'll keep the conversation flowing in that regard. Now, thank you so much for your company as well. Do pick up a copy of the Alive newspaper if you're visiting your local parish church. Very colourful and full of interesting news. And a lovely big ad on the back there for Youth 2000, doing wonderful work. And it's actually filled with lots of very interesting youth articles, this issue of Alive. Great to see this activity going on. Young people thriving in the faith nowadays. The new generation to come. Very good. May God bless you and be with you. Thanks indeed for your company today. And thanks for your reaction, responses. Do again, feel free to connect in any stage of the day or night when you're listening back, or podcasts and so on. Help the conversation move forward. Give your suggestions, your ideas, your thoughts. Let us grow together on our faith journey on this wonderful topic and duty and obligation too. Coming up now to 12 o'clock, we'll pause, we'll pray together our Angelus and our midday prayer.